How's it going? Sorry I was a little late there. I'm so sorry I was a little behind. Thank you so much for joining me for today's art live stream. Hi, I'm Todd Nauck. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So we're going to continue my Post-it Pop Art live stream. So I'm going to draw Tony Stark / Iron Man as we continue Alter Ego Week here on my COVID-19 Post-it Pop Art stay at home season situation of art live streams. It's a long, wordy title, but I figure the more words, the better, right? More clarity and communication. So feel free to draw on whatever you have. If you have Post-its, great. If you have a sketchbook, notebook paper, use that. Use whatever tools you have. You don't have to use the same tools I'm using. Use whatever pencils, pens, markers, crayons, colored pencils, whatever you got. Use that. The main point here is let's just have some fun. So let's flip the camera around and let's get to drawing. Just readjust into the rig. Welcome everybody. So glad you're here. And readjust the light. All right, so this is kind of like a, I don't know, it's a very odd color. It's not quite, it's a very light shade of kind of a greenish gray, I'm gonna call it, greenish gray. So where's my, you know what I'm gonna use, longtime viewers, my trusty rusty Unikuratoga 0.3 HB lead mechanical pencil. Let's drop in that skull. Actually, I'm gonna bring this down just a little bit because Tony's hair has a little bit of lift to it, so I wanna make sure there's some room for that. So I'm not putting the circle right in the center of the top of his head, right in the center of the paper. I like to bring it above, just have a little bit of space. I try to keep in mind what I'm going to draw and how much space do I need to use. We do use erasers, so always feel free to erase. That's why we own erasers of all sorts. Bring that center line down. Let's figure out his jawline. Not going to be quite as square as, what's his name? Steve Rogers, Captain America, that we drew yesterday. Get the eye line, nose line, and mouth line in there. Roughly halfway from the top of the head to the chin is the eye line. Halfway eye line to the chin is the nose line. Halfway nose line to the chin, mouth line, roughly. Let's bring his neck down. So we have like his little clavicle there. That's where his shoulder bones meet. So that's the shoulder bones, aka the clavicle. And the neck muscles will pull down to that. I'm going to see a bit more of his chest, the way I have Tony Stark positioned on here. We'll see a little more, might see a little bit more of his shoulders and chest than we would, we have, at least with Peter Parker and Steve Rogers. But essentially the chest is about 2 head widths wide, and then the shoulders would go out that way. So we'll get to see some pretty good armor detail, because this side is Tony Stark, this side is Iron Man. We're just gonna show both halves of this guy. Let's drop in some eyeballs, one on each side. Now I'm gonna have the helmet on this side, but I want to know just about where the shape of the eyeball is, so that when I start to build in the eye slat for his helmet, I know that it's going to cover his eye appropriately. Got his nose here. He's got a fairly straight nose. A little diamond shape for the tip of the nose. We'll only see half of it. And then the nostril there. Bring the center of from the center of the eye down. Gives me a sense of how wide to make the mouth. Welcome everyone. So glad you're here for my live stream. Thanks for tuning in. Hairline's about halfway from the eye line to the top of the head, right about there. He styles his hair up, so we'll see much of his forehead. So we'll just start to kind of carve out his hairline there. So it's across the forehead, down the temple, back over, and then down to the sideburn. And then we'll see his eyebrow on this side. We'll give him kind of a cocky eyebrow. He's a snarky, sarcastic son of a gun. So we'll put a little arc in his eyebrow there. And we'll give him a bit of a smirk too. Bottom lip, we'll have to make sure I get his facial hair in there. Now, when we do his helmet side, it's going to be very different. Very, very different. Because it's going to be more geometric shapes than organic shapes. Let's get his hair. It's kind of, we're going to style it up here, so it's kind of sticking up here in the front. And that'll come more into play as, well, we can shade in some of the dark areas so you can see here. His hair is pretty dark, a very dark brown. So, so we'll have a lot of black in there. He's got some, we're gonna give him some fairly long sideburns. Now the top of the eyebrow to the bottom of the nose is about where his ear is. So we can stick an ear off the side of his head here. Let's go ahead and drop in an iris, which is the color part of the eye, and then the pupil, which is the black part of the eye. He's got that goatee. It's kind of a thin lined mustache. It comes, kind of angles down. So I'm just keeping in mind the shape of his face. And we'll pull some hair from the bottom of his chin up to his lip there. Cheekbone. Kind of the bottom of it starts to indicate the bottom of his eyelid there. A little wrinkle in his brow there as he cocks his eyebrow. Kind of lower the eyelid a little bit to give it kind of more of a smirky eye, not a big wide eye. All right, so we'll just fully draw the pencil in the, how do you say, Tony Stark side, and then we'll do the contrast and do the entire Iron Man side on the other side. So, but trying to think of what outfit to give him. Do I give him kind of his undersuit that he would wear under here, or do I give him kind of his suit and jacket, maybe open collar? I think I'm going to give him the open collar suit and jacket. So the shirt's unbuttoned, so it's going to come down a little bit below his clavicle there. Be mostly a black suit here. So we have the black collar of the jacket, the black body of the jacket, and then just some open area here where we'll put in some gray. So now we will start to work on the helmet. Now the helmet's it's full of text, so it's gonna be a little bit larger than, you know, it's not gonna form fit his skull like Spider-Man's mask would. So we're going to kind of bring it out beyond the head. We know where the ear is, so that's where the earpiece will go. Going to work on the eye here a little bit. It's kind of that rectangular shape that kind of angles a little bit. It has a little bit of a brow. Iron Man's armor is quite challenging to draw. It's fun, but it's challenging. It's a series of plates. So we have the yellow part here that kind of runs up his forehead. So we kind of start at the middle of the forehead, angle up. You can make he's had so many different armors, you can make your angles however you want. You know, if you want to change the slight angle, feel free. Feel free to be creative. So the chin guard over to his over his jaw. Yeah, this is a very complicated character here. So we know where the mouth is, so we can kind of rough in where the mouth of the armor will go, of the helmet. We're going to angle it down there a little bit. So we have these cheek lines here. These are real complicated. This is probably one of the more complicated characters to draw. So do the best you can here, gang. I have had to study this character so many times. I've drawn him in several covers. I've drawn him in my Spidey School's Out miniseries because teenage Peter Parker went to the Tony Stark summer camp. So it's like down the chin or down the cheek. So there's a line here that goes all the way to this little chin. So this part's yellow, this part's red. Kind of got these little diamond shapes. It took me a long time to study this and kind of learn these shapes. It's very complicated. So we are at like mega level complexity here. And then there's kind of this, runs along the jaw, this line here that makes it, all this to say, or I can actually barely communicate how difficult this design is to draw. And then when you have to draw him at all sorts of different angles, depending on how he's moving on the page, ups the difficulty by a great degree. I found when I bought an Iron Man action figure, I got like the little Marvel Legends action figure, having something to look at helped me see how to draw Iron Man from whatever angle I needed. Like one of the more complex armors, like Mach 42 or 46, whatever. One of those way up there numbers. Not Mach 1, 2, 3, but Mark 1, 2, or Mark 30-something, 40-something, 50-something, whatever he's up to now. He just keeps redesigning this thing. That helped me a lot to figure out how to draw these more complicated Iron Man armors, as opposed to his like 1960s armors, his 1980s armors. Okay, so we pretty much got the helmet. Oh, and then this is the earpiece out here. So the helmet kind of sticks off his head just a bit here. And this part would be filled in black here. This will be really interesting once this gets inked and colored to see how the human face and then a completely inhuman face here. The very, maybe sometimes he has a triangle in there. Let's just do that just because I think it'll look cool. See how these two, you know, an organic and an inorganic side meet up. Now we have his armor here. So we're going to rough in one of his shoulder pieces here. He's always changing the shapes of his armor here. So you can just, you know, you can feel free to get creative if you want. Again, that's totally cool. These shapes are hard to do, so do the best you can, and I certainly won't quibble. So he's got this armor piece that goes over his shoulder. And then we have like the banded metal, that classic banded metal neck piece that goes over the shoulders. Then we got this chunk here. And then we have his little chest piece would be down here, so we can't quite see that. And yeah, I guess that's about all we'll see of his chest and shoulder there. Okay, I think we have enough of the pencils done. Oh, we'll maybe see a little bit of his Adam's apple right down there. Okay, sorry about that. Little glitch in the matrix there. Hope you're still with me. All right, let's bring in the inking tools and let's start putting in some inks. So I'll have my 0.005, my 0.1, and my 0.8 micron. We'll start with a 0.8. We'll start with a Tony Stark side and then work our way to that crazy difficult Iron Man side. So I'm going to start at the hairline here and just kind of pull up to that sticky uppy hair. Darker at the root of the hair. And to kind of separate his dark bangs sticking up from the back of his head, or the top of his head. Have some darker chunks there, but still some lighter chunks. Kind of a rim there for the highlight of the light that is hitting on his hair. I'm sure Tony uses very expensive shampoos to keep his hair with all the body bounce and healthy Pantene Pro V. Then we'll pull from the side here. I'm not seeing any comments coming up, so I don't know if there's something wrong with my app here. But I do see that people are watching, so I'm not able to respond to any comments because for some reason I'm not able to see any comments or questions. So I know most of my focus goes into the art here, but sometimes I am able to catch a comment or question, but for some reason, nothing's showing up. Like at all. So hopefully I didn't put some sort of setting that when I scheduled this live stream that disabled comments. If that happened, that was a complete accident, and we'll make sure that's fixed for tomorrow's live stream. But for now, I hope everyone is able to join me here. So I'll just keep on instructing, and we'll keep having fun. So we're gonna work on the collar here of his shirt. It'll probably be a white shirt. He tends to wear a white dress shirt with a black suit a lot of times, especially in the comics. And I will reference real-life clothing just about any time and every time I need to draw a certain outfit. Right now, not really needing to because I've drawn this type of outfit so many times it's in my memory. So I've practiced it so many times. I've drawn it so many times. It's pretty standard. So we're going to have a little trim here to separate his collar, because we'll have a deep black collar as well as the rest of his jacket here. So I'm just kind of creating a little halo. We'll fill that part in black a little later. We'll save these larger chunks of black for afterwards, after I do the color. So I'll have his shoulder there, then kind of indicating the clavicle bone that his jacket is running along, and then the rest of this will all be black. All right, so let's see. I'm going to power down to the 0.1 micron. And work in these ears here. I can build up a thick line or maintain thin lines as needed here. All right, let's tackle that eyebrow. Going to do some feathered lines here to give a nice hair sort of texture. Even on a shot this small, I can still get some nice texture here with this size micron. Get a nice dark line for the top of his eyelid. A little detail on his cheekbone there. Actually, for his nose and the rest of his eye, I need to go down to the 0.005. I need a little more tightness, a little more finer point of the nib to keep my lines crisp and clean. Especially when I get into the finer details of the eyeball. Then for the nose here, I'm just going to indicate the tip of the nose and let the rest of his nose be rendered in color. Get this side of his smirk. We'll keep using this 0.005 for the goatee. So just feathering in the hairs for the goatee, running from the side up his lip, accounting for the smirk, the muscles would pull from his face, and then here at the chin. Layering it up there so that we have a nice size goatee. Not too thick, not too thin. Let's see, where are my drafting tools? I just want to make sure I have a nice straight line here for the side of his face. Now we can work on, now that I look at it here, I think, yeah, I want to be very careful with this armor side eye. I think it's set a little too low, so I'm going to make some little adjustments here. I think it looks a little too low. So I'm going to readjust it there to make sure it lines up a little bit better. Now with the 0.1 micron. Shape it out there, and we have his brow. Kind of pulls down towards his nose. Very geometric with the shapes now. So right now I'm working inside to outside. No real reason why. I think it was just I was so focused on the eyes there that's just kind of where I ended up default starting. But since I have fairly strong pencil lines on picking out where my shapes are, I can work on these inner facial details with confidence, knowing I can do the outer contour lines second as opposed to first. Now, like I said, this is a very difficult helmet shape. I almost had forgotten how difficult it was. I actually had forgotten how difficult it was until I started drawing here. Otherwise I might not have chosen this character because he is so difficult. So you're finding it's a little too difficult. That's okay. That's totally understandable. My apologies, but still keep trying anyway. Still keep trying anyway. Still worth the effort, because you just never know what you might learn. So you got to allow yourself that freedom to try, and if it doesn't turn out perfectly, that's totally okay. That is 100% okay, because we're learning, we're trying, and we can get better through continued practice. So just do the best you can and see what results, and see what comes about. Okay, so we have that helmet coming off of his head. So this is just a bit off the skull here. But it's not like abnormally huge, it's kind of like we walk this fine line, because if it were like a really protective helmet, like a motorcycle helmet, it would really stick off of his head. But we have fantasy that we're playing with here. And so we walk the line of realism, but also we can kind of bend the rules of reality to where it can not be so big that it looks like a big motorcycle helmet, but we can almost create more of a humanoid sort of proportions where it's a little bit bigger, but it doesn't have to be quite so. Well, if that were to be in real life, it would actually have to look like this. So that's what I like about comics, is that we can take real life and then exaggerate it. We can play with it, and we're not so restricted to how would this really work in reality? Because this isn't reality, this is fantasy. And so we can play with it, and we can come up with what looks cool. But we have to be careful that line we walk. Sometimes we can push it too far. Sometimes it's like, it's this really weird dance, and it's not one set set rule of guidelines. It's kind of like you kind of know when you've pushed the boundaries of believability too far, and then sometimes it's like, okay, we can suspend reality. There's enough that we can suspend reality, if that makes sense, to where how big this helmet would truly stick off of his head. But you have to remember that Tony Stark is a super duper genius inventor, and maybe he's invented he can carry a suit of armor in like his briefcase and portions of it in a watch, or maybe even like his glasses. So it's probably a very, very fine metal, probably made from the metal, that he might have come across, invented. I don't know, maybe made a deal with Wakanda. So it might be a space age metal, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe it's space age polymers. Okay, I think that's just about got our armor done here, and so these are the shoulder panels here. Very geometric shapes. All right, so I'm gonna put my pen caps back on, click those back on, and give this a moment to dry. Pretty sure the Tony Stark side is dry, so we'll work on erasing this side. And then erase this other side here. Just take out all those guidelines. See, it makes it easier to erase first, then fill in all the black there. All right, now let's go in for color. Use whatever colors you have. Oops, got a little bit of pencil hairs up there we don't need. Use whatever colors you have to work with. If I'm going to be working with Copic sketch markers, so I'll call out those codes in case anyone else is working with Copic markers, but use whatever you have. It's totally cool. So I'm going to start with his skin tones, some E01. This kind of work dark to light. So I'm going to consider anywhere that the opposite side of where light would be hitting. To start to sculpt out the face. Now, these aren't the true shadows. I'm not working on the shadows necessarily, as I'm just working in the initial colors. I'll be coming in with gray tones for the shadows momentarily. So then the E00 here. So I'm just working towards the light source. And some R20. Some pinks here to put some life in the cheeks and the nose, a little bit in the lip, and the Adam's apple there. And some R00. Just kind of blend it all together. Looks like there's a little tear on the paper there. That's unfortunate, but we'll keep going anyway. Yeah, I might have to use an X-Acto blade, and I can probably extract that later on. These things happen sometimes, but it's not the end of the world. So let's color his hair. I'm going to start with some E89 for some really dark brown. Use that in his eyebrows, some of this in his goatee. The parts furthest away from the light. Then we're going to come in with some E57, a little bit lighter shade of brown. Actually, probably about the lightest I want to go here for Tony's hair. His hair is a darker brown than Peter Parker's, so this is about, That's about pushing it as how light I would want that hair to go. Now, Tony Stark, in the comics, he's vacillated between brown eyes and blue eyes. And I'm not sure which way to go here. I should have researched this last night. I always forget, is he brown-eyed or blue-eyed? I wish I could see y'all's comments in case someone is watching that knows and is screaming at me, it's brown eyes or it's blue eyes. I might just have to roll the dice here. And so I'm coming with some light blues, some B000 and some BG90, just to kind of create kind of a funky colored shirt there. Well, not too funky, but not a traditional white shirt. Actually, I want to put a little more skin tone here in his clavicle. So back to the E01. Let's see. Yeah, so golly, I wish actually I want to add a little more dark there. Let's see. Let me ask the Google here. Google machine, what color are Tony Stark's eyes? Tony Stark, not Strack, Stark eye color. Well, let's see. The movie version says brown. What does the Marvel Earth 616 say? It says blue. Eye color blue. Well, I'm drawing the comic book version, so we're going to go blue. Some of you might be saying, no, Todd, don't go blue. Make it brown. I hear you. Well, actually, I don't hear you. I'm just imagining that's probably what you're saying. Like I said, I can't see the comments, unfortunately, this go around. I don't know why that is. But I went with some B04 and some B01 to create a blue eye there for Tony. All right, so next up, we're going to, let's fill in the black, or what would be the black of his jacket there. I'm going to use some neutral gray. Just going to use some neutral 5 here. And it just kind of takes it from black fading to gray. We can just do one swipe like this, and then once I fill in the blacks, that will all kind of come together. We'll save all the shadows for after I've colored both sides of Tony here, his alter ego and his armor side and his Tony side. So I'm going to start with the yellows of his face mask. So we're going to start with some Y21. Start to sculpt in color. Again, I'm thinking of the light source. The light's going to come and hit here, so this part of the forehead's probably going to get more light, that part of his cheek. But as we move further away from the light source, we'll have less light hitting, so darker yellow. So like here on the sides of his mouth and the side of his temple here, that's going to be a little bit darker of a yellow. Now I'm going to switch over to a Y13. These are kind of my traditional superhero yellows. These just kind of really work for me, whether I'm drawing an X-Men character or Tony Stark here, or anyone who has yellow in their costume, the Flash, somebody like that. These are the colors are kind of my go-tos. So Y13, and then come up with some Y00, just for the lightest parts there. And we're really going to trick that out with some grays later on to really get a nice, believable shadows going on. Now the rest of them here is going to be red. So I'm going to start with my R27, which is my go-to red for comic style coloring, comic heroes. So the very top of his head is where the highlight's going to be in this regard. Very top of his chin there. Going to come in with a different shade of red a little bit later on. Oh, I forgot to ink in the banded metal. We'll ink the banded metal in a little bit later. Thought something looked a little bit like it was missing. So a lot of red through here, keeping in mind the shape of the plates of his armor, which are going to reflect the shapes of like his chest, but there'll be some extra seams and things like that. Now some Y24, a little lighter shade of red, working our way towards that light source. Then I'm going to bring in some orange for some really vibrant transition here. So I'm going to bring in some YR04. For my transition from red to an orange highlight to make it very, very vibrant. I really like the vibrancy that an orange can bring when you have for a highlight. I learned this trick from superstar Marvel colorist Edgar Delgado. I saw his color commissions he was doing at a convention, and I saw him using the orange there. It's like, Edgar, that's genius. I love how that looks. So, so I've adopted that as well, that technique. So I got to give credit to where I learned it from, Edgar Delgado. And then a little YR12 there to finish that off. So it gives them a very vibrant armor. I might come back in here and go over some of the red parts with a little R24 just to kind of beef up the red so it doesn't look too orangey. So I have that option as well. Just a little second coat, if you will. All right, let's start dropping in some realistic shadows. Some gray. I'm going to start with some cool gray. I'm going to use the cool gray 2. Just kind of start putting in my gray tones. So anywhere where the light would not be hitting. So like under the eye, under the nose, under the lip, definitely under that chin. You'll see me hit these places in most of these videos. Under that collar of the shirt there, starts to create depth. We'll start using some of this in the yellow portions. It's a good shade to use in the yellow portions. So under the eye, down that little nose ridge, down on this side of the faceplate there, that kind of shows the separation. So we're starting to create depth here. This is the point here. So we're creating depth by working our angles, working our shapes. Going to pull a little bit right there for the cheekbone. It's very subtle. A little more here at the bridge. Going to come in with a slightly darker cool gray 3, just to beef up some of the darker shadows underneath that eye. Maybe a little darker there. Maybe put a little bit of this under his nose, maybe a little bit under the eye right there. Maybe a little bit more under the chin. So you can always work dark, or you can always go from light to dark. You can always make things darker as needed as you go. Then for the armor, let's try some cool gray 5. So like at the side of the head here, a little earpiece there. Underneath that jutting chin part, or cheek part, I'm sorry, not chin, cheek part. Underneath his chin. Underneath or running alongside the armor plates as they overlap. On the underside of whatever's overlapping can help create that 3-dimensional effect. Get a little bit here on the forehead to create a little delineation there. I'm going to use this dark gray for my white eye trick, because this is colored paper. I want to use some white pencil, but before I get to that, I'm going to put a little shadow here inside the eyeball to kind of give it a roundedness, and also here on his the lens, for lack of a better term, of the eye hole here. Going to come in with some cool gray 2 as well. Just really kind of want to sculpt this out a bit. And then I'm going to bring in a little B01, just to kind of give it a glowing blue sort of vibe. And now I can come in with my colored pencil. You can use just about any brand colored pencil. I'm using an Derwent Inktense. And then I color over that gray and the rest of the spot that I want white. And it just lightens it up to just the right shade. Just like that. Now I want to create a background here. I think I want to use cool grays this go around. So I'm going to start with, we're not going to get too dark here. We're going to start with a cool gray 5. And just start to create some swatches of color moving from top to bottom. Now some cool gray 4. Now some cool gray 3. Oftentimes I go every other number. In this regard, I'm choosing to go, not to skip any numbers. So I'm going numerically. 5, 4, 3. Now if I'd started darker with a cool gray 7, I might have jumped every other one. But in this case, I chose to start mid-range, so I'm going every number step down. Cool gray 2. Just kind of color over everything to kind of blend it all together. Yeah. Do a little more sculpting there on the cloth. Now, something I thought of wanting to do last night is I wanted to create a background for what I wanted to do for the background for Tony. And what I wanted to do is a tech background. So we're gonna use some of my drafting tools, and we're gonna create like kind of a techie looking background, like we're in his lab or his workshop. So I'm using a circle template here. We're going to create a circle behind him. And tech can be a lot of fun because you can just kind of really noodle it out. So I'm going to extend some of these lines. So we're starting to create, and this is just going to be kind of all sorts of interesting geometric shapes all throughout here. Maybe we'll put a circle over here. This is just kind of a high-tech lab, so it's going to kind of have that kind of cool looking Jack Kirby funky tech sort of vibe to it. But definitely with some, well, what I hope would translate as kind of maybe some sleek modern sensibilities. So it kind of walks the line between the two is my intention. So now I'm going to use my triangle here. And some of these lines I didn't finish all the way. It's because they're going to angle in different directions here to start to create these shapes. So I can go at angles, I can go more perpendicularly. Now this has been a lot of practice. I've drawn tech like this pretty much my entire career, so a lot of years. So it's starting to create this weird tech background. Maybe we'll angle from this way. Maybe we'll start and angle over this way, then angle up, then bring a perpendicular line, straight up and down line, like that. And then we'll come back over. Maybe we'll have a seam of intricate tech here. create some dark area. Maybe reflect that more here on this side. Kind of balance it out a little bit. Let's see, let's have an up and down line going right here. Actually, I probably shouldn't have put that line there because I could have used that spot to sign, put my signature, but that's okay. Maybe I'll just put my signature going right up through there. We'll figure something out. We have lots of tech to work inside of. Let's start to create some shapes there. So I'm trying to keep design in mind. Like, how big are the shapes? I don't want things too uniform. I want there to be big open areas and little tiny clustered shapes. So I'm keeping these types of things in mind. Horizontal. I just made up a new word. Horizontal and vertical. If you want to say both those words together, it comes out horizontal, apparently. Horizontal and vertical lines. We'll put some deep, dark tech here. Some concentrated tech right there. So I chose to go with black inked lines instead of white lines because the white lines I thought would overpower. I didn't want it to overpower Tony. I wanted Tony to be the focus, not the background. So this is the choice I made here in this regard. Maybe put some small little rivets right through there. Now, if you choose to do white lines for your background, that's totally 100% cool. I have done it in other illustrations, but for this one, I felt because of the colored paper, maybe the white would be too overpowering. So that's why I made this choice here. And that's the fun of it, is that we get to make choices. And that's totally cool. It's totally cool to do that. So maybe just a couple more little studs, little rivets, and maybe a couple of diagonal lines inside this circle here. And I think that will work for this background. I don't want to overwork it. It's so easy to just want to fill it up with lines and lines and more and more and more. Not always the best idea. So sometimes it's good to just to say, that's it, that's enough. I think I better stop. And then you can always go back in and add more later if you realize you need to. But now for the Uniball Sigma white gel pen. I'm going to do my traditional outline around the character to make them pop off the page, pop off that background. Oh yeah, I still have to add in the banded metal there. Keep forgetting I need to do that. So even though I erased all the lines, I've done this so many times, I can visualize without the pencil lines how to add those banded metal lines. Then tackle this side over here. Add a little second coat where necessary, just to pump up the vibrancy of the white. Let's see, put that little highlight right there in Tony's eye. Maybe put a couple of highlights inside that eye right there. And then I need to fill in the black of his coat, of his sports jacket. The Pentel Pocket Brush Pen is what we're using now. Just to finish that off. All right, I'll take the 0.1 micron. I'll do is I can go on this side here. In this panel, I can put my name. It's almost like I'm hiding it in the tech. Over here, I can put the date, 22nd of April, 2020. Boom, Tony Stark, Iron Man. That was fun to do. Never drawn a half and half of Iron Man before. Let's flip the camera around here and we can wrap up today's live stream. All right, how's it going, everybody? Let me just clip back into the rig. Here we go. Awesome. So, gang, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Hopefully you had a chance to draw along. I don't know why the comments aren't showing up. There's just like absolutely nothing. I'm not sure why that is. Oh, there's a little... Nope. So, anyhow, gang, here we go. Hopefully today's live stream worked out well. Hey, there's Iron Man right back there, too. So my 80th anniversary Iron Man Marvel Legends figure. Different armor, much simpler armor than this one. Maybe I should have drawn that one instead of the more current Iron Man comic book armor. But I will have a shot of this on my Instagram and social media. My social media links are in the video description below. And you can, I'll also have a link to this image in the video description a little bit later on. If you just discovered me, please feel free to subscribe so you don't miss out on future art live streams and videos I might upload. And if you liked what you see here, please leave me a thumbs up. And if you're watching this on replay, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. And if you're commenting and posting here during the live stream, all you live viewers, I'm so sorry I couldn't see them. I just don't know what's going on here. I'll have to double check my settings here. But hopefully I can go back and see what y'all said while I was drawing and catch what you said. So I appreciate you at least trying to interact with me. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow for another Alter Ego Week character on a Post-it note. Who will it be? Ha ha ha! That is a surprise to come. So gang, thanks so much. I hope you're staying safe and well during this COVID-19 season. Hopefully you're keeping your hands thoroughly washed. Make sure you get inside, in between the fingers there. Get it really thorough. Make sure you wash the backs of the hands. Oftentimes we wash the fronts, but we really need to wash the backs. And get in between the fingers there. Make sure you wash the thumbs. So we want to be very thorough. I don't know why I'm doing a hand washing tutorial all of a sudden. I guess because I saw one just yesterday on my social media feed, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. They had taken some paint. They had rubber gloves and paint, and they were like rubbing the hands and showing the difference of, you know, how we oftentimes wash and how we need to wash. So I thought that was really interesting. Of course, again, this is not a hand washing tutorial video. This is an art live stream, which we are now wrapped up. Gang, I've got other things to take care of today, so I got to sign off. But it's so good getting to hang out with you, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So until then, I'm Todd Nauck. Keep on drawing, keep having fun. All the best, everybody.